Hello everyone, my name is Aminur Rahman. By profession, I'm an aerospace engineer, and something I've done most of my working, well, all of my working life. I also teach at the University of Greenwich, mainly on engineering subjects, but one particular area that I have a particular interest in is environmental ethics, Islamic environmental ethics, and something that I passionately believe in, and something that I try and engage with the wider community, Muslims, like mostly highlight the environmental crisis and what we can do as Muslims and non-Muslims alike. So, my main talk today is how I believe we can engage with the crisis and water crisis in particular. I think it all comes under this overall subject of climate change or environmental pollution and impact, etc. Should I press that? Yes. Okay. So I put this picture up because what a lot of people don't realize, so many animals, plants are on the verge of extinction, and water is one of them. So many people probably are aware of that. My presentation, I know we have a very short amount, so I'll try my utmost to complete that. I may skip a few slides, but the slides will be online or available afterwards anyway. What I want to start off with, in the Quran, there is a prophecy in the Quran on the environmental crisis, where it can be taken to be referring to the environmental crisis. Corruption has appeared on earth and at sea, and on earth and at sea, because of what hands of men have wrought. Thus God made them taste some of the consequences of their actions, so they might return. So in one simple verse, the Quran addresses the whole of mankind and summarizes it in the environmental crisis, form of corruption in a global sense. Now, it's always, I think it's good to put it into perspective. We talk about water, and we, in this country where we have taps and just continue to down the road. Yeah. Here we are, sorry. Yeah, so in this country, we really don't have a perspective on how much water there is, because we think, because we turn on the tap, it's sort of abundantly available, but in reality, if you actually look at how much water is available in this, is actually quite minuscule. And the Quran also, so we know that we have a fixed amount of water on the earth and we can't increase it. And the Quran also testifies to that God has given a fixed amount of water to the in the earth. And on top of that, through our activities, we have polluted a lot of the major water sources, rivers in particular. Bangladesh, for example, 3 of the major rivers in Bangladesh are now biologically dead, and we think we are quite safe in the UK. In the UK, also half of the rivers are also polluted, not as badly as Bangladesh, but they are polluted mainly from chemicals, from shampoos, for example, soaps, detergents, all of that which get washed into the river. Climate change and human impact on the ecosystem. Obviously, water plays a major role on world ecosystems. For example, the mangrove forests of Bangladesh, for example, which are actually at risk. And again, it's a huge ecosystem, and it's a huge carbon sinker as well. It has with a rate of 2 or 4 times higher than a mature, say, tropical or subtropical. Sorry, I have to remember. Yeah. So again, one of the things that the Quran says that everything is in a state of balance, and we see that balance when we look at the ecosystem or any ecosystem in the natural world. I don't really have time to go through it, but it's something that I really enjoy giving. Trying to get people, in particular children, to think about how everything is interconnected. Now, environmental ethics, it's a fairly new discipline. It sort of took hold from the 17th onward. But before that, in the Muslim community, it was said Nasser Hussein, or Hussein Nasser in the 60s, who sort of raised the concern for the seriousness of environmental rights, and he was really urging a lot of the Muslims to take notice and articulate environmental ethics based on Islam's traditional text and teachings. Now, in Islamic environmentalism, one thing, there are 4 themes, and this is very eloquently addressed by Reza Shah. So I have to remember to do that. Yeah, so Islamic environmental ethics has 4 themes, and this was very eloquently dealt with by Reza Shah Kizami. I do have a copy of it, which if anyone wants a copy, it is available. It is freely downloadable on the internet. I think it's from the Cambridge Muslim College that I downloaded it from. So it covers basically 4 themes: the sacredness of the natural environment from a Quranic perspective, understanding environment crisis from a spiritual perspective, i.e., the root of the crisis, and the relationship humanity we have with the natural world, and practical Islamic environmental ethics. What can we do? Now, not many Muslims may be aware, but there's a huge drive by the United Nations now to engage with the wider religious community of the world, and Islam, being a major religion, is part of that vision. So the United Nations formed the Al Mizan, or Covenant for the Earth project, where trying to engage with Muslim institutions in its aim to help highlight the climate emergency and how Muslims can engage in dealing with the emerging or with the environmental crisis. But even before that, in 1952, in America, we had theologians, scientists who put together and said, we need to work as a team to resolve or to help fight the environmental crisis that humanity is suffering. So they've been calling for religion and science all to come together to collectively address or tackle this problem. And then we had in 1990 the Dublin Statement on Water and Sustainable Development. Again, some of the principles that came out of this Dublin Statement on water and sustainable development in 1992 is, can be mapped to some of the verses which are given in the Quran, and Dr. Latana, I think, mentioned Hajar, and the Zamzam well. And again, a very good article by Dr. Hannah Ahmed. She's written on the Hajar story and how it, in particular, how women play a central role in managing and safeguarding water. Now, symbolism of water in Christianity. Now, the Christian references to water appear around about in many places of the Bible. 620 times it's mentioned in the Old Testament, and around sort of 8 to 9 times in the New Testament, and it's actually mentioned more often than faith, hope, prayer, and worship. But nowhere is, and in particular, it's in Genesis. The Genesis account of creation, where God assigns stewardship of creation to humans. That really, that's something that a lot of the new works going on in with regards to how humans deal with the environment. They're really looking at the scriptural text again and try and use that to basically engage with Muslims and non-Muslims alike, and how we can deal with how we engage with creation. And then obviously there are also stories with every prophet that's mentioned in the Bible, as well as in the Quran, has a story that is connected with water. Now, in Islam, the word Sharia, which in the West is predominantly misunderstood, literally means the way or the path to water, the source of life. And contrary to what many people believe, is that Sharia is a very dynamic. It's not a legal system, but more of an overall way of life. And contrary to what many Muslims believe, the laws are not harsh and draconian, but the single most important principle in Islam is the preservation of human life. But within the scope of Sharia, there is environmental laws which can be ascertained or can be derived from Sharia. Okay, symbols of water in the Quran. The Quran has many verses relating to natural creation and natural phenomena. And although the Quran predominantly relates to God, but second to mentioning God, the Quran mentions reference to various creation, water, water, and some of the other earth component trees, plants, etc. And that water, as Anne said, is the gift from God, and the primary purpose of water, based on this, right, is the right of humans to quench the thirst, right of cattle, and the right of irrigation. And there are other hadiths in this regard as well. Symbols of water, there are many references to water in the Quran, and you can, and they're given in various different contexts. I'm just going to skip through this, but I put quickly some of the verses in the Quran as from different contexts. So, for example, as purifying, power, as a symbol of resurrection, water can be withheld from people, etc. And that's a mercy similar to divine revelation. Now, Islam's holistic view of creation can be looked upon, understood by understanding the covenantal concept. Now, the covenantal concept also appears in the biblical scriptures, but in the Quran they appear one as Dr. Nasana said when humans were asked in primordial time before creation, when God said, "Am I not your Lord?" and we answered, "Yes, we bear witness." And then you have the covenant concept delivered through the prophets, through the people, and to the people by the prophets. And then we have the call narrative, which appears both in the Christian scriptures as well as the Quran. There's a lesson to be learned from the call narrative as to how we can engage with the problem that we are faced with in the world. Islam's holistic view of creation is underpinned by Tawheed. Again, we can look at the doctrine of Tawheed, which helps us understand how God relates to His creation. And again, here the attributes of God, which are given in the Quran, can help to look at some of the verses or something, how God relates to His creation and how we view creation. I'm going to skip through this because my time is up. So I was going to just talk about water management policies, but they are there on the slides and they will be made available. I'll just finish off really by saying, at the end of the day, we have to do something. We can't all be complacent and think that it really doesn't affect us. And there's two hadiths concerning. There's two hadiths really, I think, help here. The hour will not come for as long as there is someone on the earth saying Allah, Allah, or someone who believes in God. And even if the hour is upon you and you have a sapling in your hand, then you should continue to plant the tree. And also, we, Christians and Muslims, and all, we need to work as a community, because one of the verses in the Quran said that we need to come together as a community. So the Quran said, "Let there be a community among you." Sorry, let me just. Yeah, so let there be a community among you that calls what is good, urges what is right, and forbids what is wrong. They are the ones who have success. And there's warming story from Abraham, from the story of Abraham and the bird, when Abraham was thrown into the fire and the bird was collecting water. And I don't know if it's if I don't have a reference for the hadith, but it's a story that everyone I think knows, where the bird was dropping water on the fire, and the other bird said, "How is it without the fire?" And the bird replied, "Well, it's not really more, what I meant, what the bird is that on the day of judgment, when God asked me, what did I do? So I can tell him that I did whatever I could in my capacity. So this is, I think, how we should engage with any environmental crisis. We all need to do whatever we can in whatever capacity that God has given us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.